The earnings per share figure is the amount attributable to every ordinary share outstanding during the period. It is also the amount of money each share of stock would receive if all of the profits were distributed to the outstanding shares at the end of the year. Thus, the earnings per share information pertains only to ordinary share. But what is an ordinary share? It is an equity instrument that is subordinate to all other classes of equity instruments. It is a form of corporate equity ownership, and sometimes we call it a voting share. The computation of earnings per share requires two presentations of earnings per share, namely basic earnings per share and diluted earnings per share. The presentation of earnings per share is required for entities whose ordinary shares are publicly traded and entities that are in the process of issuing ordinary shares or potential ordinary shares in the public securities market. Or in other words, public entities are required to present earnings per share. On the other hand, non-public entities are not required but are encouraged to present earnings per share. Now, let's proceed on how we can compute or how to compute basic earnings per share. It is actually calculated by subtracting preferred dividends from net income and dividing by the weighted average common shares outstanding. The earnings per share formula looks like this. You will notice that the preferred dividends are removed from the net income and the earnings per share calculation. This is because EPS only measures the income available to common stockholders. Preferred dividends are set aside for the preferred shareholders and cannot belong to the common shareholders. So here is a simple illustration that will help you visualize what I've stated a while ago. The first step is to calculate the earnings available to ordinary shareholders. In this case, the preferred stock dividend must be deducted to get the net income used for the basic EPS calculation. The note states that the preferred stock dividends is treated as equity, so we must remove this in the adjusted earnings calculation. Next is that we need to calculate the weighted average shares outstanding, giving us the result of what you can see in front of your screen. We need to remember that basic EPS is a common or ordinary share calculation and is after profit allocation to both preferred shareholders and any non-controlling shareholdings and subsidiaries. The shares outstanding is time-weighted for any changes in the share count during the period in question and is called weighted average shares outstanding. What is dilution and anti-dilution? Dilution arises when the inclusion of the potential ordinary shares decreases the basic earnings per share or increases the basic loss per share. In this case, the potential ordinary shares are dilutive securities. It is a decrease in the equity position of a share of stock because of the issuance of additional shares. Dilution is usually detrimental to the position of existing shareholders because it weakens their personal claim on earnings and assets. On the other hand, anti-dilution arises when the inclusion of the potential ordinary shares increases basic earnings per share or decreases basic loss per share. Here we have an illustration regarding the diluted earnings per share and how to compute it. In a normal scenario where details of all adjustments are available, we would use the following formula. Diluted earnings per share is equal to net income minus preferred dividends divided by shares outstanding plus unexercised employee stock option plus convertible preferred stocks plus convertible debt plus warrants. Or, when considering the effect that stock options have on issued shares, we would consider the following set of formulas. Diluted earnings per share is equal to net income minus preferred dividends divided by shares outstanding plus diluted shares. Or where diluted shares is equal to stock options issued minus value of stock options in current shares. We would also need to find out the value of the payment made to exercise options. Amount paid is equal to options used multiplied exercise price per share, followed by determining the value of options in stocks. value of options in stock in current shares rather is equal to amount paid to exercise options divided by current share price. Observe that if a convertible bond payable is outstanding during the entire year, it is assumed that the conversion takes place at the beginning of the year. It is a method used by companies to calculate the number of new shares that can be potentially created by unexercised in-the-money warrants and options. It is used to identify the use of continuations that can be obtained after developing options and warrants when calculated diluted EPS. It agrees that any continuation will be used to buy ordinary shares at average market value during this period. So here we have an illustration on how to compute earnings per share using the treasury share method. So that's where we end our discussion regarding PAS 33 or earnings per share. Hope that you learned something from us. Thank you.